The vast chamber of the Galactic Assembly shimmered with crystalline light, its domed ceiling alive with shifting constellations. Delegates from 100 star systems reclined in hovering seats, their voices layered in tones of arrogance and laughter. A holoscreen hung in the air, projecting high-resolution footage of dense green jungles, canopy upon canopy, mist curling between branches, rivers cutting through the darkness. The alien spectators chuckled at the swarming insects, the uneven terrain, the constant wet sheen of humidity. To them, this was chaos, primitive and unworthy of serious consideration. One reptilian general, his scales glinting like polished stone, sneered as a jaguar leapt across a fallen log in the footage. A battlefield? This is a swamp of filth. No structure, no control. Armies are meant to move in precision, not stumble through vegetation. His statement triggered a wave of agreement from insectoid tacticians, avian strategists, and cybernetic commanders, all boasting about their own species' streamlined, mechanized war doctrines. Hovering in the shadows of the chamber's edge, the human representative remained still. His uniform was plain, no decorations, no flourish, his eyes unreadable behind the faint reflection of the holoscreen. He neither joined in the laughter nor flinched at the mockery. A feline warlord leaned forward, tail flicking lazily. We could pacify such terrain in less than a planetary day. Drop a battalion, scan the environment, clear resistance. Any army trained in proper conditions could do it. His tone dripped with casual dismissal, and others chimed in, throwing out bold numbers, hours, not days, claiming their armored units and drones would cut through this wild chaos effortlessly. From the assembly's central podium, the presiding official proposed what many thought would be a spectacle, a demonstration of superiority. A test. One of the galaxy's finest armies would be deployed into such terrain, filmed, and broadcast live to the entire network. The purpose? To show that the wilderness of Earth was irrelevant against advanced military power. The laughter returned, sharper now, carrying the smug certainty of beings who had never truly been hunted. The official turned toward the human delegate. If this is your world's pride, we shall give you a chance to prove it can withstand modern war. Agree to the test, and the galaxy will see the truth. The terms were presented as if it were a formality, an inevitable humiliation. The human's voice, when it came, was quiet. We agree. But the conditions must be equal. The chamber stilled slightly at the tone, measured, almost casual, but with no hint of hesitation. He outlined one clause: the Assembly's forces would choose the jungle on Earth. Humanity would choose the participants to oppose them. No drones, no orbital strikes, no environmental sterilization, just soldiers, equipment, and the terrain as it stood. The alien generals conferred, amused. To them, this restriction was meaningless. Their troops were trained for any condition. They sealed the agreement in moments. When the list of human participants was revealed, it caused another round of ridicule. The names meant nothing to the galaxy at large. No celebrity generals, no armored divisions, no advanced war machines. Just the unit designation: Earth Special Forces, Jungle Warfare Division. Fewer than 36 soldiers, equipped with conventional firearms, knives, rope, and camouflaged uniforms. The reptilian general from earlier smirked openly. Men with rifles against armored platoons? This will be over before the first meal cycle. The feline warlord purred in amusement, suggesting they wager on how many minutes the humans would last. The human delegate said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence was neither defensive nor uncertain. It was the kind of silence that allowed others to build the rope they'd later hang themselves with. Preparations for the operation moved quickly. The alien forces selected one of the densest jungle regions on Earth, certain that no human advantage could outweigh their superior numbers and technology. Every detail was arranged to favor them: supply drops, real-time satellite mapping, armored exosuits designed to function in humid climates. Their troops were the pride of interstellar warfare, hand-picked for endurance, coordination, and precision. The assembly treated the upcoming broadcasts like entertainment. Entire sectors scheduled public viewings. Betting markets formed on how swiftly the human side would collapse. Commentators prepared snide remarks in advance, expecting a swift and one-sided victory. The night before deployment, the human delegate visited his chosen unit. There were no speeches, no motivational rhetoric. Only a single instruction. They expect a fight. Don't give them one. Give them a hunt. The soldiers nodded, eyes calm, their faces painted in greens and blacks that made them vanish into the shadows around the camp. The alien commanders didn't see that meeting. They didn't understand the way those soldiers breathed in the jungle air like it was life itself. They didn't see how every leaf, every sound, every patch of shadow was being memorized before the first step had even been taken. When the appointed day arrived, drop ships roared toward the jungle's edge. Alien troops descended in perfect formation, their boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. They expected resistance. They expected a firefight. What they found was silence, thicker than the air itself. Somewhere beyond their sensors, in the green depths where light barely reached, the hunters were already moving. The alien soldiers advanced in tight formation, confident in their armor and the steady stream of data from their scanners. Humidity clung to their visors, blurring the readouts. Every step pressed into a soft layer of rotting vegetation that released a sour, unfamiliar scent. Above them, the canopy closed in like a living ceiling, cutting sunlight into fractured beams. They tried to keep their discipline, but the forest swallowed sound in a way that made their own movements seem too loud, every footfall echoing in their minds. Initial readings showed no threats, no large lifeforms, no energy signatures. The commanders took this as confirmation of their superiority. Still, they ordered their drones forward. Within minutes, the first mechanical unit signaled a system fault. Its feed showed only static before cutting out completely. The loss was dismissed as a minor glitch, but a second and then a third drone failed without warning. Maintenance crews couldn't retrieve them, they simply disappeared. Without aerial or mechanized support, the soldiers relied on personal scanners, yet even those began producing inconsistent readings. The dense moisture confused thermal imaging, and thick layers of foliage reflected signals back at them in fractured patterns. Each time a soldier turned to address a teammate, there was the uneasy feeling that something had shifted in the background, a branch swaying without wind, a shadow in the wrong place. The first casualty happened without a sound. A forward scout stopped to check a sensor spike. When the rest of his unit looked back, he was gone. His locator pinged from the same position for 3 seconds, then shut off entirely. They searched the immediate area, finding nothing but a patch of disturbed soil. No blood, no tracks, just absence. Unease began to spread. The alien commander issued orders to tighten ranks and keep visual contact at all times. The further they went, the slower their pace became. Even heavily armored, the oppressive heat forced them to remove auxiliary plating to avoid overheating. It was then they noticed fine scratches along some soldiers' armor, as though something had passed close enough to drag metal across the surface without triggering proximity alarms. An hour in, a sharp metallic crack echoed through the trees. One of their exocets collapsed, its leg actuator punctured by a sharpened spike buried beneath the undergrowth. Before the crew could lift it free, the disabled soldier's visor flickered with static. The feed showed a brief blur of mottled green and brown before the connection died. The soldier was gone when the interference cleared. They pushed onward, more cautiously now. A chorus of animal calls began to rise from deeper in the jungle. At first, the soldiers ignored it, but the pattern soon became too deliberate, 3 short bursts, a pause, then 2 more. No 2 calls came from the same direction. Attempts to triangulate the sources led patrols in circles until they returned to their original position, wasting valuable time and energy. By the 4th hour, the heat was sapping morale. Hydration packs were depleted faster than predicted. One unit reported finding their reserve water punctured and leaking into the soil. Another squad found their rations shredded, packaging left scattered as though deliberately displayed. No animal tracks surrounded the sites. The alien commander ordered a halt to regroup and assess losses. While they formed a perimeter, faint whispers bled into the comms system. At first they were dismissed as interference from the thick canopy, but then the whispers began to form words, names. Individual soldiers' names, spoken in an unfamiliar but unmistakable accent. The effect was immediate. Troops checked their surroundings in panic, weapons raised. Efforts to jam the signal failed. The source shifted constantly, never remaining in one location long enough to pinpoint. Some soldiers fired into the undergrowth at phantom movements, wasting ammunition. The commander's attempts to restore discipline were cut short when another unit reported the sudden disappearance of their rear guard, vanished between one heartbeat and the next, without a sound. They resumed movement, every step now careful, every glance over the shoulder edged with fear. The earlier bravado had dissolved into tense silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of their own labored breathing. Somewhere ahead, deeper in the green, the unseen enemy moved without hurry, without waste, never revealing themselves, yet always close enough to be felt. The realization began to take root: the jungle was not simply terrain. It was part of the threat, and it was on the enemy's side. By nightfall, the alien force had established a temporary encampment, positioning automated turrets and floodlights in a tight perimeter. The heat did not relent. Instead, the damp air thickened, clinging to armor and skin. The soldiers expected an attack under the cover of darkness, but none came. The jungle beyond their lights remained silent except for the distant drip of water. Some took the absence of conflict as a reprieve. Others understood it for what it was: a decision by their unseen adversaries to let them wait. The first sign of intrusion appeared at dawn. Supply crates that had been stacked in the center of camp were found open, contents disturbed. Nothing had been stolen in the usual sense. Instead, rations were spoiled, containers punctured and soaked with mud, water reserves tainted with the smell of rot. Ammunition boxes were intact but filled with useless rounds, the powder removed without disturbing the casings. The sabotage was surgical, carried out with precision that suggested not only infiltration but the ability to work silently in the midst of sleeping soldiers and active sensors. The commander ordered immediate inspections of all equipment. Small malfunctions were found everywhere: comms units with loosened connectors, power cells drained without explanation, weapon calibrations shifted off by fractions that would ruin accuracy in a firefight. It was not destruction, it was degradation, designed to erode confidence and slow every reaction. Not long after, the comm channels came alive again with the same disembodied voices from the day before. This time, they spoke in calm, deliberate tones, describing the position and posture of individual soldiers as if the speaker stood directly behind them. The words carried no threats, only observation, yet the effect was worse than open hostility. Every soldier began to check over their shoulder compulsively, twisting to scan for something they could never quite see. A squad sent to investigate the perimeter failed to return. Their locator beacons moved steadily away from the camp for a short distance, then stopped in unison. When the commander dispatched a retrieval team, they found nothing except 6 helmets arranged in a straight line on the forest floor. The armor was gone. There were no tracks. As the hours passed, the weather shifted. A wall of rain descended without warning, drenching the camp, filling every low spot with water, and turning the ground into clinging mud. The humans moved in it effortlessly. Their absence was obvious, but their influence was everywhere. Footsteps appeared where no one had been seen, only to vanish in the next moment under the shifting water. Animal calls returned, more complex than before. The pattern was too structured to be natural, yet the alien force still could not identify its meaning. Each attempt to trace the source resulted in units encountering traps, sharpened stakes hidden under shallow puddles, snares that lifted armored troops off the ground, thorn-laced vines positioned at head height. These were not random hazards. They were tailored to slow, wound, and disorient. By midday, another body appeared in camp, not left where it fell, but placed with deliberate care in the center of the supply zone. The armor had been stripped, the weapon dismantled, and the soldier's identification tag placed neatly in their hand. There was no visible injury, only the unmistakable stillness of someone who would never rise again. A captured officer was returned shortly after, staggering through the perimeter in a daze. He could not explain how he had been taken or how he had been freed. His words came in fragments, flashes of movement, painted faces, eyes that watched from inches away without sound. His account ended in silence, his expression locked somewhere between disbelief and fear. The commander abandoned any notion of seeking out the enemy and ordered the entire force to converge on a tighter defensive position. This unintentional retreat compressed them into a formation that limited movement and sight lines, creating blind spots within their own ranks. It was exactly the kind of environment their opponent had been shaping from the beginning. As night approached again, a final transmission broke across every channel in perfect clarity. "You are being herded." The voice was human, steady, and close. Then the comms went dead, leaving the sound of rain and the steady pulse of fear pressing in from the dark. The attack came without warning, yet it was clear it had been prepared for hours, maybe days. It began with a silence so complete that even the constant patter of rain seemed to vanish. Then, from somewhere beyond the perimeter, a sharp, single rifle crack split the air. One soldier fell instantly, a clean shot through the visor at a distance the aliens considered impossible in such dense cover. Before the nearest comrade could turn, another shot echoed from a different direction, dropping a second target with equal precision. Turrets rotated frantically, scanning for heat or movement, but found nothing. Every possible firing angle was blocked by layers of foliage. The soldiers fired into the greenery in blind bursts, wasting ammunition on leaves and shadows. That was when the explosions began, not the rolling devastation of heavy artillery, but small, calculated blasts that severed key pathways and blocked escape routes. Each detonation drove the alien force further inward, compressing them until the outer defenses were abandoned entirely. From the edges of the formation, silent figures slipped in and out of view, barely visible shapes blending perfectly with the terrain. The enemy never stayed long enough to be targeted. A shot would drop one soldier, a blade would take another, and then there was only emptiness where a second earlier there had been life. Weapons jammed unexpectedly. Power cells that had worked moments ago refused to engage. Optical systems flickered into static before shutting down altogether. The aliens tried switching to manual targeting, but every time a human was sighted, they were gone before a trigger could be pulled. The commander attempted to call for extraction. The signal connected, but instead of fleet control, a human voice answered, low and unhurried. "Extraction denied." The line went dead before the commander could reply. Then came the sound the aliens were least prepared for, a heavy mechanical thrum cutting through the air, rhythmic and growing louder. It was unlike the quiet, almost sterile hum of their own transports. These machines roared. Helicopters broke through the canopy, rotors hammering the air with raw, physical power. The noise was deafening, disorienting troops used to silent deployment craft. Even before the soldiers registered the machines themselves, the psychological weight of that sound pressed down on them. From above, flares dropped into the jungle, staining the air in harsh light and shadow. The humans moved through this shifting glow like predators in their natural element, the flare light only making their camouflage seem more alive. The aliens' vision adjusted poorly, pupils contracting and expanding too slowly to track the sudden movements around them. Squads tried to regroup, but each path they took ended in an ambush. A sniper round from an unseen position would drop the lead, forcing the rest to scatter, where waiting traps and knife strikes thinned their number further. Some soldiers attempted to break into the deeper jungle, but those who did were never seen again. The comms occasionally caught a single scream before cutting to static. The remaining troops clustered together, creating a tight, defensible core, but this only made them easier to contain. The humans never rushed them. They circled, striking only when a soldier stepped too far from the group. Each kill was precise and quiet, followed by a return to stillness that stretched the survivor's nerves to the breaking point. The commander, now visibly shaken, tried to rally his forces with direct orders, but his words were cut short as a round punched through his chest plate from an angle no one could trace. His body was dragged into the darkness before it hit the ground, leaving the command chain severed. The final phase was swift. Shapes emerged from every side at once, not charging but advancing with controlled, methodical steps. Firearms discharged in measured rhythm, no wasted bullets, no missed shots. Within minutes, the last pockets of resistance collapsed. The aliens dropped their weapons, hands raised not from a formal surrender but from the instinctive knowledge that there was no other choice. The jungle returned to quiet, but it was no longer the same silence as before. This was the silence of a hunt completed, the kind that lingered not in the air but in the minds of those who had survived long enough to realize they were never the hunters here. The surviving aliens were herded into a clearing, stripped of weapons and armor, their equipment piled in a silent heap. None of the humans spoke as they moved among them, checking restraints and scanning the perimeter. The captives tried not to meet their eyes, but whenever they did, they found no visible anger or triumph, only the calm gaze of those who had complete control. The alien general, bound but upright, was brought forward. His armor had been removed, leaving him exposed to the humid air and the gaze of the human who had agreed to this challenge. The representative stood in the same plain uniform he had worn in the assembly, his presence as unshakable here as it had been under the mocking laughter of alien peers. "You came to prove our wilderness was a weakness," the human said evenly. "Instead, it proved something to you. You entered our home thinking it was an obstacle. You never understood, it was an ally." His words carried no need for emphasis. They were spoken as simple truth. The general tried to mask his breathing, but the slight tremor in his stance betrayed the strain. He said nothing. Without raising his voice, the human continued. "We do not fight the jungle. We are the jungle. The ground under your feet, the air around your head, the water in your lungs, it works with us, not against us. You brought numbers, armor, and pride. We brought patience, memory, and the knowledge that here, every step you take writes your defeat." Around them, the captured soldiers shifted uneasily. Some had closed their eyes, as though wishing to be anywhere else. The sound of distant movement in the foliage made more than one flinch, even now, when their captors were in plain sight. A signal was given. Portable hollow projectors activated, casting scenes into the air, unedited footage from the operation. The galaxy would see everything. The live broadcasts had been cut off during the hunt, but now the complete record played from multiple angles, squads vanishing without a trace, weapons failing, traps striking with perfect timing, soldiers breaking under the relentless unseen pressure. The feed showed the final moments of the commander's fall, the methodical collapse of formation, and the surrender in the clearing. The alien general watched, his jaw tightening as the evidence unfolded. This was not brute force. It was strategy designed to unmake an opponent before the decisive blow ever landed. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. Military analysts from species that had once scoffed at primitive terrain now rewrote doctrine, noting that no simulation could replicate the kind of intimate environmental mastery displayed here. Commanders spoke quietly in private channels about what would happen if such tactics were applied in other settings: deserts, mountains, urban sprawls. The answer was always the same: the result would be similar, because the advantage did not come from the land alone, but from the humans themselves. The phrase, "green hell," began circulating in military forums before the footage had finished playing. It was not an official designation, but the name spread faster than any formal report. Soldiers across systems spoke it with a mixture of respect and dread, the way one speaks of a predator known by reputation alone. The human stepped closer to the general, lowering his voice. "This lesson was for you. But the galaxy was listening. If they are wise, they will remember it. If they are not..." He let the sentence end there, letting the silence carry the weight of what he did not need to say. When the prisoners were escorted out, no human jeered or taunted them. There was no need. Every step they took was under the weight of an experience they would never escape. For the rest of their lives, they would hear the echo of voices in the dark, the feel of unseen eyes tracking every move, the certainty that they had been prey in a place where the rules they trusted meant nothing. The jungle swallowed the humans again as they departed, their presence fading until only the wind and the rustle of leaves remained. Somewhere high above, a final transmission left Earth, carrying the full record to the assembly with a single line attached. "In space, you may hold the stars. On Earth, we hold the ground beneath your feet."